All right, folks, welcome to According to Sam. This is episode 259. We're a week away, from the 2024 presidential election, and everybody's making their last pitches to the American people. Tomorrow, Kamala Harris is going to give a speech from the Ellipse in Washington, D.C., the place where Donald Trump gave his speech on January 6th, before his supporters went down to the Capitol. And Kamala Harris is going to make everything about January 6th and fear, and they're calling him a fascist and saying that he's a Nazi. And this rally that he had in Madison Square Garden yesterday was reminiscent of a Nazi rally. There's Israeli flags with the Star of David being flown all over this place. Tons of Jews there supporting him, tons of other people there supporting him, but it's a Nazi rally is what they're telling us. So we're going to see how many people are buying that or listening to the media, how much influence the media has, not only the media, these celebrities. I mean, it's just like 2016 with Hillary Clinton had all the celebrities, all the same celebrities are showing up to her events, singing songs, telling you to vote for Kamala Harris. And we're going to see. We're going to see in 8 days, maybe 9 days, maybe 10 days. It may be another 2 weeks before we actually see. But all the votes should be in 8 days. The election day that the Constitution refers to as election day, is next week. Now, will we know the winner in 8 days, a week from tomorrow? I'm not going to count on it. But when we do know the winner, we're going to see if the media propaganda and all of this demonizing of Donald Trump, if it is going to work or not. So I want to get back into what we've been talking about in past podcasts. We've been talking about the Bush-Clinton dynasty. I've been telling you that Kamala Harris is a representation, a continuation of the Bush-Clinton dynasty. But she's running on change. She has to run on change because this is a change election. 7 in 10 Americans believe that the country is on the wrong track. So this has been a major point of the campaign. She's been asked over and over again, how are you going to be different? What would you have done? What would you have done different from the Biden administration? And now she's saying that I won't be a continuation of the Biden administration. She won't say, what exactly she'll do, but she's saying that she won't be a continuation of the Biden administration. Nope, that's not true. She's not only going to be a continuation of the Biden administration, she is going to be a continuation of the Bush-Clinton dynasty. And that's what I've been trying to get you guys to understand. I want to start today with this clip. This is a Chinese woman who was outside of Madison Square Garden yesterday at Trump's Nazi rally. And I want you to listen to what this Chinese woman says in this street interview.
You heard it right here, folks. 2024, folks.
Chinese, we're Chinese, first generation. We love Trump from our bottom of the heart because we know Trump is the only one can save America. Kamala is so stupid. She is so low. IQ equal no Q, no qualification to be the president. You shall stay away from that position. You already lost the position. You lost our trust. You lost our vote. You just need to go home, to stay home. You cannot do anything to save America. You are so stupid. You don't know anything. You cannot even answer any question from the camera, from all the media. How you can be on the stage to fight for America, to protect American people, to protect all the world. You are
You're not qualified. You just need to go home. Now, that's a lot of passion coming from this little Chinese Nazi woman. And I was, thinking to myself, what is it about these people? She says that she's first generation America, that she came over from China. I don't know how old this woman is. I mean, she could have been a child during the Great Leap. Great Leap ended in the early 60s. Who knows if, but she came from a communist country, from China. You look at what the support that Trump is getting from the Cuban population down in Southern Florida. I mean, this woman's speaking with a lot of passion, but people that have come from communist countries and know what it's like to flee communists, like the Cubans in Southern Florida, like this Chinese woman here. Yes, it's important to them that, we were talking in the last podcast about Kamala Harris wanting to implement federal price controls. That's something that the Cubans in Southern Florida understand, because Castro did that. It's something that that I bet you this woman understands, because Mao did that. So this woman speaks with a lot of passion, but I wanted to show you that because I think she speaks for a lot of us. So I want to get back into what we were talking about in the last podcast, and we were talking about price controls and Kamala Harris's her plan to control prices on groceries. Her running mate also included plane tickets as well. Who knows what else they're planning to control the prices of, but she says groceries. That's her written and stated plan, is to control prices of groceries, because some grocery store chains are price gouging. Bill Clinton says that these major grocery store chains are raising their profit margins up 1%, just 1% more, and they're raking it in because they're selling to gazillion amounts of people. Well, we're not seeing 1% raises in the grocery stores, Bill Clinton. We're seeing more like 75%, 100% price ranges. So where's all that price range, that price increase coming from, if these major corporations are only raising their profit margins up 1%? Makes no sense at all. But we were talking about that in the last podcast. And then we started talking about the immigration, the migration problem, the fact that the Kamala Harris and the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris administration allowed record numbers of migrants in their first 3 years in office. And then they tried to do a bipartisan bill that they claim Donald Trump killed, even though 6 Democrats voted against it in February. That didn't pass. So then the Biden administration in June implemented executive orders that have had a dramatic effect on decreasing the amount of migrants that are coming across. And they only did that because it's an election year. So they want to show this decrease in migrants coming across. So they don't have this problem as they're going into the election. But as Anderson Cooper asked Kamala Harris in the town hall from last week, that if you were able to do this and stop the flow of immigration in June through executive action, why didn't you do it back in 2021 and 2022? And the answer to that question is Bill Clinton gave us that answer. We were talking about this in the last podcast, that Bill Clinton says we need these migrants. They want the migrants. The migrants are coming across because they want the migrants. If you understand what's going on, if you go down to the Darien Gap and you see that all of these NGOs that are funded by the Biden administration, they're giving these migrants maps. They're feeding them. They're right before or right after they come out of the Darien Gap, they give them food. They give them maps. They tell them what to go. There's Catholic Charities. There's, all of these different NGOs that are there. They're facilitating this. They want the migrants. They need the migrants to come in. to keep the wages low. And Bill Clinton even admitted it. And we played this clip in the last podcast of him saying that we need these migrants. They just need to be vetted. The problem is they're not vetted because they're committing all this crime and they're killing people. But the problem is not the migrants. We want the migrants. We just need to make sure that they're vetted. So we were talking about these, victims of migrant crime in the last podcast. These poor girls whose lives were cut short because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden left the borders wide open and they let murderers cross over into the United States. But Kamala Harris's record and the blood on her hands, because her open border policy, it's not just the inaction of her and Joe Biden and I'm not even talking about inaction. They took direct action. Let me just step back and say that, because it wasn't inaction. They took direct action to open up the border. They removed the Remain in Mexico policy. They implemented catch and release. They fought Texas when Texas put up barriers and tried to stem the flow of illegal immigration. So inaction is definitely not the right word. They took direct action in opening up the border, and these girls and women, their lives were cut short. This young girl right here, you're going to listen to her mother, because Trump's just cut a new ad with her mother, with this young girl's 12 years old. She was 12 years old and she was strangled. Look, she's still got braces on. So Trump just cut a new ad with this girl's mother. I'm going to play it here in a moment. It's fire. It's so sad, but these girls are dead because of the action and the policy of the Biden-Harris administration. But this is not the only blood on Kamala Harris's hands, is what I'm getting to. Kamala Harris, as the district attorney of San Francisco, she had a sanctuary city policy when she was the district attorney of San Francisco. So this policy of open borders and supporting illegal immigration into the country of Kamala Harris goes back to her time as district attorney in San Francisco, and she has more blood on her hands going back to that time. Kamala Harris championed sanctuary cities policies, and these migrant crimes could come back to haunt her. Look at this. This is a young Kamala Harris as district attorney. Edwin Ramos killed Tony Bologna and his sons. He left this man's wife, a widow, and killed his two sons because of Kamala Harris and her sanctuary cities policy. So she's got tons of blood on her hands. I mean, not just because of what they did and in this administration, her and Joe Biden, her open border policy, sanctuary city policy, and the blood on her hands because of that policy goes back. Tony Aguilera, a legal migrant from Honduras, was another juvenile who was arrested during Harris's reign and not turned over to federal authorities. Who'd he kill? Gruesome gang-related murder where I think he decapitated one of these right here, nearly decapitated. Aguilera attacked him with a sword. He attacked someone with a sword and nearly decapitated someone with the sword. He was from Honduras here illegally. Kamala Harris gave him sanctuary in San Francisco. So her record goes back. We all remember this guy who found the gun. I found the gun in the Embarcadero, and then he shot and killed Kate Steinle. This poor girl lost her life, is dead under Kamala Harris's reign. So she's got blood on her hands. The point I'm trying to make is that it's not only they want the migrants to come to in the country, and like Bill Clinton says that we need the migrants. They just have to be vetted. But what I'm telling you is that they're not being vetted. And quite frankly, we don't need the migrants. I mean, we need to employ Americans first, and then where there's a shortfall, then we bring in migrants as we need them. But there was one speaker in Madison Square Garden yesterday. I think that was the guy from the union that was speaking, but he was like, "That's what America first means. that we need to employ Americans first. But this is their philosophy. This is what they believe.
Georgia, not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. Okay. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work. Right. There wouldn't be a problem.
See, and that's what they believe. There wouldn't be a problem. And that's why they're down in the Darien Gap, and they're facilitating these migrants coming up, giving them maps, giving them food. They're facilitating it all the way up with the NGOs. They want the migrants. They want the migrants because, like Bill Clinton says, we need the migrants, and we need them to keep wages low because we're not having enough babies. We're aborting our babies. They want you to abort your babies, and then they're bringing in the migrants to replace. But these migrants are bringing a lot of crime with them, and that is unavoidable. That's unavoidable that the migrants are not being vetted, and the migrants are killing Americans and bringing a lot of crime with them. A lot of crime with them. And that's what I want to get into today, because Donald Trump, this is the debate that Donald Trump did with Kamala Harris. And I want you to listen to this clip. This is one. Now, everyone says that Kamala Harris wiped the floor with Donald Trump in this debate, that all he did was tell lies, and he didn't tell the truth, and she got him off track. But, well, let's listen to this clip and you'll see where I'm going.
Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
so look at David Muir. You remember this. And this is why I don't blame Trump for not agreeing to do any more debates with the fake news. He did 2 debates, and he had to debate the moderators along with Joe Biden, along with Kamala Harris the whole time. But David Muir fact checks Donald Trump. This is one of the many times that he fact checks him in the middle of debate and tells the audience and people viewing at home that Donald Trump is wrong. Donald Trump is lying to you when he's telling you that crime is up. That crime is actually down, according to FBI numbers, is what David Muir says here in this fact check. And again, this is one of the examples of people saying that all Trump did was lie in the debate, and Kamala Harris wiped the floor with him because all he did was lie. Let's listen to the lie again.
Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime is down.
All right. So David Muir fact checks Trump and tells him, as you know, Donald Trump, crime is down according to FBI statistics. Trump's like, no, they fudged the numbers. They fudged the numbers. I want you to listen. This video that you're getting ready to look at, this is a host of MIT's data science podcast. So she's a data scientist. She's the editor of the Harvard Data Science Review. And as you can see, that this video is 11 months old, almost a year old. I want you to listen to what this data scientist says in this interview.
Here now, host of MIT's data science podcast, Data Nation, also professor of data science at Washington University, Liberty Vittert. Okay, so is the FBI cooking the numbers, or are they just being selective?
The FBI isn't cooking the numbers. The news media is cooking the numbers. This is one of the most outrageous uses of statistics I have ever seen when it comes to crime statistics. Nationally,
data scientists. MIT, Harvard. This is one of the outrageous uses of data that I've ever seen, is what she says.
Media.
Maybe she's a MAGA Nazi. Maybe, are you a MAGA Nazi lady?
FBI isn't cooking the numbers. The news media is cooking the numbers. This is one of the most outrageous uses of statistics I have ever seen when it comes to crime statistics. Nationally, what's happening, up 1%, down 1%, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's happening in individual states and individual cities. That's what matters to the American public, is what is happening in their city, in their town, and in their state. And we have seen clearly overall that in democratically run cities and states, we have seen these unbelievable increases in crime, up to 40% in violent crime in different democratically run states. Whereas in Republican run states like Florida, for example, we've seen these unbelievable decreases. And this is what really matters to individual people.
All right, you and I have talked about this, right? And we've done a lot on the program about the dumbing down of America, the lowering standards. You want graduation rates to increase, you just lower the standards for graduation. I'm also wondering if there's a little bit of that in, if you want crime to decrease, you just decriminalize things. In California, marijuana, sale of hypodermic needles, theft under $950, loitering and jaywalking. New York, marijuana, sale of hypodermic needles, on and on and on. If you decriminalize a lot of things, and probably if you de-incentivize the police, the crime rate also goes down, doesn't it?
Well, of course. I mean, that's the craziest thing here. If you look at California, property crime, all property crime is up 12%. That's just the crime we know about. When you decriminalize larceny, which is for under $950, the police then don't catch these people because they know they're just going to be released right away. So the fact that even with the decriminalization of these types of crimes, we still see this enormous bump across all types of crimes in California means who even knows what these numbers could be. They could be double. They could be even triple what is reported.
All right. So this interview and what this girl is saying was a year ago. And the debate where David Muir fact checks Donald Trump was just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. So this is something that's been widely known, and that the FBI has been fudging the numbers on crime. And now this article, and this is just one article, but it's talking about what just recently happened. October 16th. You can see the date on this. Real clear investigations. Stealth edit. Now think of yourself. Why is this a stealth edit? Why was it quietly that the FBI made this edit to their crime statistics? Stealth edit. FBI quietly revises violent crime stats. Just a few weeks ago, October 16th is when this article comes out. When the FBI originally released its final crime data for 2022 in September of 2023, it reported that the violent crime had fell to 2.1%. This quickly became and remains a Democratic Party talking point to counter Donald Trump's claims that crime is soaring. But the FBI has quietly, why quietly? If David Muir is in the middle of this interview going to fact check Donald Trump and call him out in front of everybody in America, when the FBI, when they revise these statistics of crime up to where there's a lot more crime than what they originally said, why is it being revised quietly? Why aren't you reporting on this on ABC News and on every news channel that, look, crime is up, that Trump was right, crime is up? But no, they quietly. But FBI has quietly revised those numbers, releasing new data that shows that crime has increased by 4.5%. I have a video here that breaks this down. I want you to take a listen.
The FBI has revised its crime data from 2022, first reporting a 2.1% decrease in violent crime, now revealing a 4.5% increase. The increase from 2021 to 2022 in each crime category is depicted here. The revision includes 80,000 more incidents of violent crime than previously reported.
80,000 more incidents of violent crime than what were previously reported. David Muir, 80,000 80,000 more incidents of violent crime. The FBI has quietly updated their crime statistics.
Includes 80,000 more incidents of violent crime than previously reported, 1,699 more murders, 7,780 more rapes, and more than 33,000 robberies and 37,000 aggravated assaults. The FBI released this new data without formally announcing the changes, noting only on its website that the 2022 violent crime rate had been updated. The discovery was first highlighted by John Lott, an American economist and political commentator. The revised data is all publicly available. The FBI's revision changes previous claims once touted in news headlines. It means a reported trend of consecutive years of decreases in crime is no longer true, given the increase in crime in 2022. The new figures also change the narrative for a drop in crime in 2023 compared to 2022, now reduced from a previously reported 3.5% to a 1.6% decrease. The issue of violent crime in the United States is a politically charged one. Democrats have consistently pointed to the FBI's crime data to show a decrease in crime under the Biden-Harris administration.
And so the FBI is under the Biden-Harris administration. The FBI is part of the Biden-Harris administration. So she's part of the Biden-Harris administration. She's running for president of the United States. So this agency that's under her administration is quietly updating their crime statistics. I mean, you don't see a problem with that? That they didn't make this come out and make this a public statement and make this known where people can get the understanding. Nobody in the media is reporting on this. Nobody's talking about the fact that the FBI has increased their crime statistics with 80,000 more incidents of crime. That there wasn't a decrease, there was actually an increase of 4.5%. Now, people, everyone's talking about Donald Trump and his campaign being a campaign of hate. That you know, the Bible says that we just got to take in all these immigrants. You know, that's what Tim Walsh says. You know, Book of Matthew says that as you did for the least of these, that means we got to take them all in. That's the right thing to do. And Donald Trump and people that are against immigration, they're only preaching hate. That's the only thing they care about is hate. This girl's mother loves her. She loves her. I mean, I'm going to show you, got a clip here of this new ad that Trump put out. This woman's family. I'm sure her family loves her too. I'm sure this young girl, Lakin, I'm sure her family misses her and loves her too. What I'm trying to get you to understand is, no, people, this isn't a campaign of hate. This is a campaign of love. If you love your family and you want to keep them safe, then you're not letting these people in your country. Vetted or unvetted, whatever you say. You're not letting, if you love your family, if you love your daughters, if you love your country, you're not letting these people in to harm, to rape, to murder your daughters, your family. Oh, this isn't a campaign of hate, people. This is a campaign of love. Now, the crime statistics are up, like Donald Trump said. Donald Trump said that he told you that the crime statistics are up, that they were faking the numbers. They called him a liar and said that was a lie. Now the FBI is quietly updating their crime statistics. And who's committing the crime? Who's committing the crime? Well, take a listen. Who's committing the
Texas
crime?
police are reporting a surge in gang violence by illegal immigrants across the state. Dallas police charged 4 illegals with robbing a woman at gunpoint during a home invasion. San Antonio police arrested 20 people on drugs and human trafficking charges at an apartment complex. And some are confirmed members of the brutal gang, the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua.
I mean,
TDA.
there's so many of this Venezuelan gang in this country. And they are in different areas, different pockets, so many of them. I mean, they are a real problem in this country. And this home invasion incident that they're getting ready to tell you about that happened in Dallas is just wow. So, I mean, and Trump says this in the debate. Crime is up. It's migrant crime. These are the people doing it. The FBI is revising their crime statistics that show that Trump is right, that yes, crime is up, and it is these migrant invaders, particularly these gang members from Venezuela, but from all over the world, people coming into this country unvetted.
Brutal gang, the Venezuelan gang, Tren Aragua, TDA as they're known. Vice President Kamala Harris has flip-flopped on the White House's border policies, which allowed millions to come into this country illegally. Now she's promising hundreds of millions for Trump's border wall she once called a waste of money. Well, you know, she came from a state in California that benefited from a structure on the border. It's like she's got her memory back, or not. She wanted to decriminalize illegal crossings and has walked that back now. Her campaign has backed off her previous calls to eliminate Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Texas Congressman Pat Fallon.
Kamala Harris wants the American people to forget it was the Biden-Harris administration, but she wants you to forget about the hyphen and the Harris. And we can't do that. And they only even discuss the border, David, when it's election season. So Absolutely. It'll be 4 more years and it'll get tremendously worse.
Brooke Taylor is in Dallas with more on the gang crisis. Brooke.
Harris, this recent story out of Dallas is just frightening. This woman was pulling into her garage when she says that 4 men with guns followed her in. They held her at gunpoint, tied her up, threatened her while they ransacked her home. Check out these suspects here, now all arrested and charged with aggravated robbery. Records show all 4 are from Venezuela and have ICE holds. Police identified Manuel Hernandez through fingerprints because he already had a criminal history, including a DWI. Recently, he was stopped at a traffic light and arrested after not having a driver's license and registration.
And it's funny because everybody's talking about this Trump proposal to, once he gets in, to start mass deportations. And Trump has said this. They've said this over and over again, that the very first people that we're going to deport are people like this. That when people start asking him, how is deportations going to work and all this stuff, he says the very first thing we're going to do, we can talk about everyone else once we get rid of everyone with the criminal record. If you have a criminal record, you're gone immediately. And the fact that that people are arguing with him about this, and that and Democrats are saying that, oh my God, that such a hateful person. He wants to deport all of the people that have all the undocumented and illegal aliens that have criminal records. I mean, what's wrong with you people? What's wrong with you people? We can't even deport the people with criminal records? You people are unreasonable. Unreasonable.
According to police, he was released just 1 day before the robbery. He eventually led police to the other 3 suspects.
He was released 1 day before
he was stopped.
Released 1 day before they went into this woman's house and pistol whipped her and ransacked her house. He was released 1 day before. I mean, if Trump was in office and he was arrested and they saw that he was undocumented and that he had a criminal record, he wouldn't have been released at all. They would have turned him over to DHS to be deported if Trump was in office. But no, this is an undocumented alien with a criminal record, and then he's released the day before he rushes into some woman's house and ties her up and pistol whips her.
He already had a criminal history, including a DWI. Recently, he was stopped at a traffic light and arrested after not having a driver's license and registration. According to police, he was released just 1 day before the robbery. He eventually led police to the other 3 suspects, including the so-called ringleader of the group, Wilmer Gonzalez. When police arrested him, it turned into an 8-hour intense standoff at an apartment complex in Irving. I spoke to a lot of neighbors there there who said that it was just so unsafe, especially for their young children who live in that community. Neighbors shared videos with me of armed SWAT teams entering his apartment. The 4 Venezuelan migrants are accused of following that woman into her upscale Briarwood neighborhood home in Dallas. Police say they tied her up. They hit her with a gun, threatened her,
pistol whipped her,
and stole thousands of dollars in jewelry and money.
We welcome people who are not, who come here legally, but people who are not here illegal or are not coming in legally, we have to wonder about why they were able to get here in the first place.
They were able to get here in the first place because Bill Clinton says we need those workers. That's why. That's why they were able to get here in the first place, because Bill Clinton says we need those workers. That's what he says. Okay, so this is the ad with the mother of this young girl. She was 12 years old, and she was strangled to death. Her life cut short because of Kamala Harris's and Joe Biden's border policy. I want you to take a look.
Sunday night, I asked her to not stay up super late because of her coming to work with me in the morning to do her summer school. She said, okay. I told her good night and I love you. I went to bed, not realizing that that was going to be the last time I saw her.
We're best friends. Yeah. We're going shaking again.
I woke up to notice she wasn't in her bed. I'm in my heart trying not to lose my mind because I don't know where she is. I finally remembered her phone had a location on, and her phone was pinging just 2 minutes down the road, right behind the skate park. I start driving to the direction the phone was being pinged at, and I see a couple cop cars with lights on. I see yellow tape, and immediately my heart drops and sinks to the bottom of my stomach. My daughter's hands and ankles were both bound. She was strangled to death, left with no pants. And I know in my heart, she fought incredibly hard. She was not going down without a fight.
We begin with 2 men we're learning are charged with capital murder tonight, accused of killing a 12-year-old girl.
Police say these men strangled her before dumping her into that creek. Both men were in the country illegally.
Apprehended, then released by Border Patrol less than 3 weeks before Jocelyn's death. The men accused of killing Jocelyn Nungare are affiliated with the gang known for brutal violence.
Kamala Harris was in charge of immigration in our borders. If we had better border policies and not open borders and not these catch and release policies, I truly believe this all could have been prevented. Under her being vice president of this country, my daughter's life was ripped away from her. Wow. She had her entire life ahead of her.
Happy birthday, dear Jocelyn.
My daughter is 6 feet in the ground based off of policies that she allowed to keep. Kamala Harris did have one job, and she not only failed, not me, she failed my daughter. She failed Jocelyn. You know, she was only 12. President Trump reached out, gave me his sincerest condolences as not a former president, but just as a father, someone who cares. I believe Donald Trump needs to be back in office. I can at least know that my next child will be safe in this country.
Brutal. It's actually a brutal ad, and the Democrats, they'll tell you this is anecdotal. That's what they'll tell you. This poor child and the loss of her life, the fact that she was, remember what Donald Trump said when he came down the escalator and everyone accused him of being a racist. He says, they're bringing crime, they're bringing drugs, they're rapists. Some of them are good people, but it doesn't matter that some of them are good people. because they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, and they're rapists. And we need to be able to determine who are the good people and who are bringing crimes, drugs, and the rapists. And everyone says, "Oh, he says they're rapists, and he's a racist, and his campaign is a campaign of hate." No, this is a campaign of love. This young girl, this 12-year-old girl, was raped and she was murdered. And they will tell you that this is anecdotal, but it's not anecdotal. It's not anecdotal. There's 3 victims. And then let's look at the other victims from Kamala Harris's past when she was the DA in San Francisco, and she allowed these other people to be killed. And look at the crime statistics now. You can't say it's anecdotal when we have crime statistics that are even pointing out the fact that crime is on the rise. And the crime started to rise in 2021-22 when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actively did things to open up the border to let the migrants in. The crime started to rise. It's not anecdotal. You can't say this is anecdotal. These are statistics. FBI's crime statistics and crime. All right, so let's get back into the financial crisis. I want to finish up talking a little bit about what we have been talking about in past podcasts. We didn't in the last podcast, but in the podcast before that and in many podcasts before that, we were talking about how these guys, Alan Greenspan, Larry Summers, and Robert Rubin in the Clinton administration, that they set up the housing crisis that took place in the end of the George Bush administration as Barack Obama was coming in. I've explained all this to you. Let's not forget Timothy Geithner. Timothy Geithner too was there with them in the 1990s that did all of the deregulation and blocked Brooksley Born from regulating the derivatives. They repealed Glass-Steagall and other legislation from after the Great Depression, and they unchained Wall Street, unchained the banks, and set up the crash that happened in 2009. I told you how these guys in 2000 that they had crafted a letter that warned that the United States was going to be completely debt free in a decade, and that was viewed as a crisis because there were going to be no more treasury bonds, and it was a crisis that the United States was going to be completely debt free. So they had to do something to take care of that debt, and they did a lot of things, and they did take care of the problem that the United States was going to be debt free. The United States is $35.8 trillion in debt currently. So these guys set all of that up in the Clinton administration. George Bush set up the housing bubble when he came in. After 9/11, after he had cut taxes, he needed to show growth as he took us to war. So he set up the housing bubble. And then the bubble burst as Obama is coming in. Obama's in the Senate in 2009. He rails against Wall Street. He rails against all of the corruption and everything that had taken place in these two administrations. He says that he's going to come in, that he's going to rebuild the economy from the bottom up. He made a distinction between Wall Street and Main Street. He says he was going to hold the people accountable that set the fire, that did these things. So Obama comes in, and that's where we were in the last podcast. We were talking about how Ted Kaufman was Joe Biden's replacement after Obama picks Biden to become his vice president. Kaufman replaces Biden in the Senate in his seat in Delaware. And Kaufman becomes this hound dog. He's the one who really starts going after Wall Street and putting pressure on the Obama administration to prosecute some of these people. They get Obama to pass this act. It's called the Fraud Enforcement and Recovery Act of 2009. Read a little bit of this. It says the Fraud Enforcement and Recovery Act 2009, enacted May 20th, 2009 in the United States. The law enhanced criminal enforcement in federal funds, especially regarding financial institution, mortgage fraud, securities fraud, and commodities. So they get Obama to pass this, and Congress starts doing investigations. All this money goes to the Justice Department, the Postal Service, Secret Service, the SEC. This act allocated funds to all of these agencies to go after this white collar crime, this financial crime that had caused the crisis. But at the same time, the Obama administration was going to be obstructing Congress, particularly, and nobody ends up going to jail. Nobody is prosecuted. No high end executives or board members. None of the people who Obama said he was going to hold accountable actually get held accountable. So we were talking about that 2 podcasts ago. I want to pick up where we left off, talking about Kaufman and some of the things that he did in his efforts to hold these bankers in Wall Street accountable, and how the Obama administration, how Eric Holder, who Obama says, or Eric Holder said Obama was his homeboy, I think, or one of them said that's my homeboy. But Eric Holder and Obama are homeboys, and Eric Holder's is Obama's attorney general, prosecutes no one. Obama's FBI recommends prosecution for no one. So that's what we're talking about here. Let's get back into that.
Ted said to Chairman Leahy, I would like to chair an oversight hearing to ensure that these funds are being spent effectively.
We met with Lenny Brewer, who was the head of the criminal division. We met with Rob Kazani, who was head of enforcement.
Lenny Brewer is the guy at the FBI who's responsible for doing the investigation. I'm going to show you who this guy is here in a moment.
We met with a senior deputy in the FBI, Kevin Perkins.
We sat down and we sort of got down to business, and Ted said, Chairman Leahy has asked me to hold an oversight hearing that will provide me with a public forum to explore, just what you're doing on this front of investigating Wall Street. Well, that certainly got their attention.
They started telling me about this great thing they had out in California, this web to catch the mortgage brokers who had given out the loans. And we made it clear to them, I made it clear to them that absolutely positively, this is not about LA. This is totally about what went on Wall Street. That's what the bill says, and that's what the emphasis is.
So I just want to make sure that we understand what he's talking about here. Chairman Leahy, Patrick Leahy, is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. So if you go back to this fraud enforcement bill, it says right here, Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont, a Democrat, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, sponsored the bill. So Kaufman's on the Judiciary Committee. Leahy gives him the ability to call this committee hearing to bring in, who's the committee hearing for? To bring in representatives from the Justice Department, from the FBI, from the Secret Service, from the Postal Inspection Service, from the security, from the SEC, from all of these guys who got all of this money. Kaufman wants to bring them in this public hearing, and he wants to interrogate them and find out, what are you doing with this money that we have allocated to you in this bill to go after Wall Street? That's what Kaufman's talking about here in this clip.
He has asked me to hold an oversight hearing that will provide me with a public forum to explore, just what you're doing on this front of investigating Wall Street. Well, that certainly got their attention.
They started telling me about this great thing they had out in California, this web to catch the mortgage brokers who had given out the loans. And we made it clear to them, I made it clear to them that absolutely positively, this is not about LA. This is totally about what went on Wall Street. That's what the bill says, and that's what the emphasis is.
We said, don't just come back here a couple of years from now and say, look at all the small fry we nailed the wall. We're talking about also investigating senior level people at Wall Street firms, even at the board level.
Even at the board level. Take note of that. Even at the board level.
A little bit concerned at this meeting that the FBI wasn't necessarily at that point, this is now fall of 2009, aiming high enough.
Shortly before the hearing, the Justice Department made an announcement.
President Obama has established the Financial Fraud Enforcement Task Force to investigate and to prosecute.
Listen to this. So listen to what Obama administration is doing. They're dragging their feet on investigations. Kaufman tells Leahy that I want to bring these guys in. I want to bring in the FBI. I want to bring in the SEC. I want to have a public hearing and ask them what they are doing with this money that we've allocated to them. And then what the Obama administration does days before this hearing, then the Obama administration creates this task force. Now, what does that do? The task force gives these guys that when they're coming to the hearing to be confronted by Kaufman about what they're doing with the money, it gives them something to say that, look, we just created this task force just the day before the hearing. So this is what we're doing with the money. We are, a year and a half into this thing, and we're finally creating a task force. What took you a year and a half to create a task force? They create the task force just before Kaufman's hearing. The other thing that does is that limits the amount of things that they're able to talk about in this hearing with Kaufman. So they're not allowed to talk about some of the stuff in these open investigations. So this was a ploy that the Obama administration is doing, because the Obama administration, if you remember, all of the people from the Clinton administration who caused the crash, Larry Summers, Timothy Geithner, Gary Gensler, all these other Wall Street people from Goldman Sachs, they're all in Obama's administration. He brought them on into his administration after running on this platform of, I'm going to rebuild the economy from the bottom up and hold Wall Street accountable. He brought them all on into his administration. So, of course, he was obstructing any of these board members that were responsible for this. And if you remember, this guy who is Larry Summers, Larry Summers is his protege. He was the Treasury Secretary before Larry Summers became Treasury Secretary. Robert Rubin himself is a board member. He's a board member at Citibank, because like I told you, after he left the Treasury Department, he went to work and become a board member at Citibank, where he had lobbied to get rid of Glass-Steagall for Citibank. And then he goes to work for Citibank. So he's a board member of Citibank. So if Larry Summers is in the Obama administration, you think that he's going to let Obama go after and let Kaufman go after his boy, Robert Rubin? You think that Timothy Geithner, who was also one of the proteges of Robert Rubin, who is now Barack Obama's Treasury Secretary, you think these guys are going to go after the board member at Citigroup, who is their mentor? No, Obama brought all these people on from the Wall Street crash that set up the crash. They're in his administration. No, they're not going to let Kaufman go after these guys. So Obama is obstructing them, is what you're noticing here. Let's go back here a little bit.
That the FBI wasn't necessarily at that point, this is now fall of 2009, aiming high enough.
Shortly before the hearing, the Justice Department made an announcement.
President Obama has established the Financial Fraud Enforcement Task Force to investigate and to prosecute fraud and financial crime.
This is the value of oversight hearings. A week before our hearing, they announced the Fraud Task Force.
And we will not hesitate to bring charges where appropriate for criminal misconduct.
Somebody had to come to that hearing and talk about what they were doing. And so that was the impetus. I am convinced to the day I die that the only reason that Fraud Task Force was announced at that point was because somebody had to go to the hearing.
That's exactly why. It took them a year and a half to announce this Fraud Task Force. No, they announced the Fraud Task Force just so they could obstruct this hearing that Kaufman was having.
Financial crime.
This is the value of oversight hearings. A week before our hearing, they announced the Fraud Task Force.
And we will not hesitate to bring charges where appropriate for criminal misconduct.
Somebody had to come to that hearing and talk about what they were doing. And so that was the impetus. I am convinced to the day I die that the only reason that Fraud Task Force was announced at that point was because somebody had to go to the hearing.
Mr. Brewer, last month we saw a jury acquit the two Bear Stearns hedge fund managers. Are there lessons we can learn from that, or is that just a one?
So this is Lenny Brewer right here.
The jury system.
This is Brewer. So it was his job to do the investigations and to make recommendations to the DOJ for prosecution.
And juries,
he made none. No recommendations.
They're going to do what juries feel are right. These are tough cases, but we're going to continue to bring them. It's not a deterrence at all. We're marching forward.
One of the things that oversight hearings do is it holds folks' feet to the fire. We wanted to get them to say what they could in public that paralleled what they had said to us in private.
Why haven't we seen more, boardroom prosecutions?
Senator, these are complicated cases. Don't for a moment think that they're not being pursued and investigated.
From Main Street to Wall Street and beyond. We are focused on that, and we will bring the cases where it's appropriate.
No cases were brought. Well, Wall Street to Main Street, where these are complicated cases, no cases. Couldn't bring any cases on anyone. So there were several congressional hearings. This is a different congressional hearing, but still, this is one where they brought some of the CEOs of some of these banks in and questioned them. Take a listen to some of this.
Due diligence adequate.
Beginning in January 2010, a fact-finding commission established and funded by Kaufman's Fraud Enforcement and Recovery Act held a series of public hearings.
In mortgage underwriting, somehow we just missed, that home prices don't go up forever.
We held 19
somehow listen to Jamie Dimon. Somehow we just missed that home prices don't go up forever. That's hilarious.
Due diligence adequate.
Beginning in January 2010,
we go high.
A fact-finding commission established and funded by Kaufman's Fraud Enforcement and Recovery Act held a series of public hearings.
In mortgage underwriting, somehow we just missed, that home prices don't go up forever.
We held 19 public hearings. We reviewed millions of pages of documents, corporate documents, regulatory documents, most of which had never seen the light of day. Mr. Bowen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I witnessed business risk practices which made a mockery of city credit policy. If you take an organization like Citigroup, for example, people involved in due diligence like Richard Bowen. To substantial risk of loss. Signal.
So I want to explain who Richard Bowen is real quick, who this guy is. So I have another clip here that's going to explain who this guy is, Richard Bowen from Citigroup, okay? From Citigroup, Citibank, Citigroup. And Citigroup is, again, who I told you that when Robert Rubin left Bill Clinton's Treasury Department, he went to work on the board of Citigroup. He was in the Clinton administration. He left the Clinton administration in the last year. His protege, Larry Summers, who becomes Barack Obama's head of his economic recovery team, becomes the Treasury Secretary in 2000. Rubin goes to Citigroup to sit on their board. Mr. Bowman here works for Citigroup. I want you to listen to a little bit about who he is.
My name is Richard Bowen. I was with Citigroup, and I was a senior vice president and business chief underwriter in the commercial lending group. And the overall operations I had purview over involved about $90 billion a year of mortgages we were purchasing from other mortgage companies.
And what were you to do with those $90 billion worth of mortgages?
I had responsibility to make sure that those mortgages met our credit policy guidelines.
So the bank had agreed to buy these loans.
Subject to their meeting our credit policy.
I understand what he's saying. His job, so as I told you, what they were doing were securitizing all these loans. So that's why in the clip that we just watched, when Kaufman sets up this committee hearing to bring in the members of FBI and SEC, find out what they're doing with this money, and they start talking about what we're doing out in California. We're going after, these predatory lenders out in California. Kaufman says, no, I don't care about what happened out in California. What we want to look at is what happened in New York, what happened in Wall Street, because what happened in California didn't matter. Those loans were being written in California, but they're being sold and being securitized by Wall Street. So that's why Kaufman wanted to focus on Wall Street and not what was going on in California, because these loans were coming in to Citigroup, and this guy's job as the underwriter was to see when these loans are coming in from California, do these loans meet our credit requirements before we accept these loans and put them in securities? Do these loans meet our requirements? It was his job to determine when these loans were coming from California, do they meet our credit requirements before we bring them into Citibank and securitize them and sell these securities? That's what he's talking about here.
And what were you to do with those $90 billion worth of mortgages?
I had responsibility to make sure that those mortgages met our credit policy guidelines.
So the bank had agreed to buy these loans.
Subject to their meeting our credit policy.
But you found out that the loans that your team was looking at didn't meet the credit policy.
We found that approximately 60% of the loans did not meet our policy.
60% of the loans that Citibank were bringing in from California didn't meet their credit requirements.
60%.
This is what he found out.
Yes.
60% of the loans didn't meet
our policy.
Your policy.
Yes. And the volumes increased through 2007. And the rate of defective mortgages increased from 60% to an excess of 80%.
80%, up to 80% in 2007.
On November 3rd, 2007, Bowen wrote an email to 4 senior Citibank executives.
Look who's on that email. Look who's writing the email to. Look who's the first name till two. Ruben. Ruben is on. He writes this email to 4 senior executives, and one of them is Robert Rubin. This guy who set up the whole crash. He was Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary. He was the mentor of Larry Summers, who's Larry Summers is now the head of Barack Obama's economic team. He was also the mentor of Timothy Geithner, who Timothy Geithner is now as his job as Treasury Secretary under Barack Obama. In 2007, this guy who is the underwriter, vice president of underwriting, who's he's writing a email to Robert Rubin and other executives in Citibank to tell them that 80% of the loans that you guys are bringing in from California don't meet our credit requirements. Robert Rubin.
60% to an excess of 80%.
On November 3rd, 2007, Bowen wrote an email to 4 senior Citibank executives, including board chairman and former Secretary of the Treasury, Robert Rubin. Since mid-2006, I have continually identified breakdowns in internal controls. I must now communicate these concerns. I am deeply distressed.
I actually included in that email my cell phone, told them I was available this weekend to please call me. And in that email, I also requested an outside investigation. And in December,
it says urgent.
I sent another email.
Read immediately.
And I said, please contact me. You need to know the details behind this. There are risks.
He knew
to
the details, bro. Robert Rubin knew the details because he set it up. Robert Rubin knew the details because he's the guy who set it up. So now you know who this guy is once you look at this part.
Of city credit policy.
If you take an organization like Citigroup, for example, people involved in due diligence like Richard Bowen.
To substantial risk of loss.
Signaled up the line, all the way up to Robert Rubin, that something was wrong. That they were finding that some 60% of mortgages that they were buying weren't meeting their standards.
80%.
Mr. Bowen sent you an email.
In one exchange, the commission asked Citibank's Robert Rubin to respond to Bowen's email.
Did you ever act on that?
Mr. Chairman, I do recollect this. And that either I or somebody else, and I truly do not remember who, but either I or somebody else sent it to the appropriate people.
Rubin told Angelides that actions were taken to improve the
We sent it to the email that Bowen sent him saying that 80%, up to 80% of the mortgages you guys are bringing from California don't meet our credit requirements. And then Robert Rubin, who is the chairman of the board, says, yeah, we sent it up the chain. What do you mean up the chain?
One exchange, the commission asked Citibank's Robert Rubin to respond to Bowen's email.
Did you ever act on that?
Mr. Chairman, I do recollect this. And that either I or somebody else, and I truly do not remember who, but either I or somebody else sent it to the appropriate people.
Rubin told Angelides that actions were taken to improve the bank's due diligence operations, but his recollections were vague.
I certainly don't remember today whether I knew at the time or not. I truly do not know, Mr. Chairman.
If the excuse at the top was, we didn't know, that's a pretty poor excuse from people who are hauling down 10, 20, 30, or in Robert Rubin's case, $115 million.
$127 million is what it actually is. Is that what it actually is? I'm almost done, but this article, read you some of this article before in Bloomberg, Rethinking Robert Rubin. Subtitle: As Treasury Secretary, Robert Rubin oversaw the last great roaring economy. And I explained this to you because that roaring economy was a problem for them because it was balanced budgets. It was budget surpluses. It was economy and that was based on peace and prosperity. Yes, it was the last great roaring economy because it was the last time we balanced the budget. It was the last time we had surpluses. It was the last time that the country was at peace. As Treasury Secretary, Robert Rubin oversaw the last great roaring economy and set the table for its demise. At Citigroup, he was paid $126 million, and the firm almost perished. So this guy, after setting up, he set up the crash when he was there as Treasury Secretary, went to Citigroup, knew the crash was going to happen, and bailed out of Citigroup right before the crash happened with a $126 million parachute. I want to show you one more thing here in this article. It says, talking about Robert Rubin. He is a regular participant at the annual Bilderberg meeting, so secretive that it makes Davos look like an American Idol taping, and a member of the Harvard Corporation, the discreet board that runs his alma mater. He also, talking about Rubin, regular meets with congressmen and foreign leaders and has access to the Obama administration through Timothy Geithner and Larry Summers. Doesn't say Larry Summers here, but Larry Summers is the head of Barack Obama's recovery team. He regularly meets with congressmen and foreign leaders and has access to the Obama administration through Timothy Geithner, who Obama put on at the Treasury, his old job, and other proteges, meaning Larry Summers, Gary Gensler. So these guys are not going to let Obama go after these crooks. That's what Obama's role. Obama brought all the crooks onto his administration, and then he let them off. I have more of this, a little bit more of this that we're going to get into in the next podcast. I just want to show you some of the things, some of the fraud that was committed in the next podcast that could have been prosecuted, that wasn't prosecuted because Obama had all these people that set it up in his administration and let them off. After running on change, after saying that he's going to hold them accountable, after saying he's going to rebuild the economy from the bottom up. That's the change you got. And that's what you're going to expect from Kamala Harris. Can't expect from her. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you guys on Friday.